Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Later today, we'll be voting on amendments to Bill 16, the Climate and Green Plan Implementation Act. These amendments are made necessary because the Government of Canada has decided that our comprehensive Made-in-Manitoba Climate and Green Plan, developed by Manitobans and for Manitobans, is not sufficient for its own escalating carbon taxation plan. The amendments are necessary because the federal government has refused to acknowledge that we are in Manitoba already Canada's greenest province. Necessary because Ottawa would not recognize the massive investments that Manitobans have already made in such things as clean hydroelectricity. And necessary because Ottawa was unwilling to consider and accept our unique emissions profile. The federal government has chosen to take its actions because it has refused to agree that our plan would cost Manitoba families and businesses less, would have been more effective in reducing greenhouse gas emissions than the federal plan, and because it insists on forcing Manitobans to pay a carbon tax that would rise to at least $50 per ton, which is double our plan. This is not the outcome we sought. This is not the outcome we had expected. It did not have to be this way. On October 27th of last year, our government released its Made-in-Manitoba Climate and Green Plan. Our comprehensive plan was based on 4 pillars: climate, jobs, water, and nature. The plan also included, as you know, Madam Speaker, a flat carbon price, flat like the Prairie Horizon, $25 a ton. The price would start at that level, and it would stay at that level until 2022. Our plan would have saved Manitoba families over $500 million over 5 years. It would have provided stability to consumers, industry, and our ag sector. Rather than embrace this effective, affordable plan, the best in Canada, the federal government would not accept our approach on one basis and one basis only, on the issue of its carbon tax. Immediately, the same day we announced our plan, they said we had to up our game. We have repeatedly attempted to persuade Ottawa of the wisdom of a climate plan designed by Manitobans, for Manitobans, in a province where we have consistently upped our game. We have asked the federal government to acknowledge our clean status, our green investments, and our specific circumstances. We've asked them to respect their own commitments to using a collaborative approach based on flexibility. This dialogue has continued for months, despite federal threats in December of 2017, again in January of this year, to withhold funding under the Low Carbon Economy Leadership Fund. The discussions continued after those threats were overcome in February of 2018, when Manitoba joined the Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate Change on a clear reservation of rights basis. We made clear at that time that we did not accept the escalating federal carbon price schedule, nor the application of the federal backstop to impose that tax scheme on Manitobans. We set out our position, and the federal government confirmed that the funding for the Low Carbon Economy Fund would indeed flow. Our dialogue continued right through to my meeting with the Prime Minister on September 11th of this year, when, to my great disappointment, he made clear that Manitoba's plan would be rejected, and that Manitoba's historic and ongoing investments would not be recognized by his government in determining the adequacy of Manitoba's proposed plan. He indicated that his government would not look beyond next year in assessing Manitoba's climate plan, and he would not provide assurances that the escalating federal carbon tax, scheduled to rise to $50 per ton by 2022, would not be applied to Manitobans. Now, the rejection of our plan by the federal government guaranteed that Manitobans and Manitoba businesses would face the impact of rising and rising again carbon prices. Now, these increased prices would compound the debt burdens already borne by Manitobans due to costly hydro investments. Increasing carbon taxes would discourage private capital investment and would threaten to slow our economy's growth. Manitobans would be forced to pay twice the tax for poorer climate results while jeopardizing our economic growth and our economic recovery. Such risks, the consequences of such unreasonableness on the part of the federal government, we cannot and do not accept. Accordingly, on October 3rd, 2018, we stood up once again for Manitobans. We said no to Ottawa's carbon tax. We said yes to Manitoba's made-in-Manitoba Green Climate Plan. The weeks that followed have confirmed the soundness of our decision. Concerns have mounted that the federal government is pursuing a two-tier approach to carbon pricing, an approach that continues to fail to undertake a fair analysis of the stringency of our plan and reinforces why we were forced to say no to Ottawa. An approach that applies different standards, Madam Speaker, across the country. An approach that permits, for example, Newfoundland and Labrador to reprofile their gas tax into a flat carbon price of $20 per ton. Provides offset credits for coal plant to hydro generation investment, not yet undertaken, and permits a broad range of home heating, diesel, and offshore petroleum exemptions. An approach in which the equivalent pricing value of Quebec's cap-and-trade system, for example, falls below the federal benchmark, yet avoids the federal backstop. And an approach in New Brunswick where, despite application of the federal backstop, emission standards have been relaxed for coal-burning power plants, amounting to an almost complete exemption and making that pollution virtually free. The federal government's approach is not consistent, it is not collaborative, it is not fair to Manitobans, and that is why our government is standing up for the citizens of our province on this and many other issues. We will continue to work to ensure that Manitobans are treated equitably. We will oppose the imposition of a federal carbon tax that rises to $50 per ton. We will take all necessary steps to protect the interests of Manitoba consumers, Manitoba families, Manitoba businesses. I look forward to today's vote as we say no to Ottawa's carbon tax and we say yes to our Made-in-Manitoba Climate and Green Plan.
Hear, hear.